good. Okay, well, we're going to begin. I think it's time. So, with no further ado, here's the beginning. All right, today's presentation is on sort of oldies but goodies. At least that's how it was billed. The idea was to find something to do in the presentation that's a little bit different in format and presentation. And when I decided to do this, I thought I might take some set of Guatemala stamps and do a deep dive. And show the information about it, do a little bit of teaching, and maybe provide a little different perspective on this. So my first steps were false steps. I decided, well, let's do the small Quetzal issue. And I realized after spending an entire morning on it, that there's just too much information to present. So I started thinking about it. I decided what I would do is provide a little bit of insight and discussion on the very first airmail stamps of Guatemala. It's Scots numbered C1 to C5. So with no further ado, let me share my screen and get this going. Okay, can everyone see my screen now? Mm-hmm. I guess you can. All right, so let's take a look at this. Let's all learn about this and see what conclusions we can draw and maybe what questions remain to be answered and researched. So the Guatemalan government always issues what they call an acuerdo, which is an authorization to issue stamps. We'll talk a little bit about that acuerdo later. But the decree that was issued, which was dated November 19th, 1928, caused these existing stamps to be overprinted. The existing stamps were the 15 peso values, mostly printed by the Waterloo Company. But for some reason, and we can look at that later, Perkins Bacon also issued a 15 peso stamp, and those got overprinted as well. So they were overprinted in red, and we're going from the old pesos to centavo de quetzal, to quetzal denominated stamps in the values of 3 centavo de quetzal, 5, 15, and 20. In this particular, what you're looking at here, by the way, I just want to mention that, this is actually a page from what will be the new handbook on these stamps. So what I've done is I've taken the black and white scans and scanned my own copies of these, but I left over the black and white scan, which does a better job of showing the overprint by itself in relief. Eric, I got a question for you. Maybe you can answer it now if you wouldn't mind unmuting. I noticed that in some of the fakes and forgeries articles that David Reitzman is doing, I noticed that you're credited with providing the photos with the stamp background wiped out. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's done in Photoshop. So I take a scan of the stamp in color, and I am able to, like for instance, these, I can isolate just the red, and then white out everything else. It can be very tedious if there's, for instance, if there's red in the background already, and you have red overlying that. If it's not able to be separated well, it's.
Do you do pixel? Do you do pixel by pixel?
Oh, mama!
Sometimes?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah. Well, I sort of use a either my mouse or a pencil pad that I have to go around in each one.
Ooh, baby, yeah, mama.
And
Lee, you might want to mute. I'm going to mute you, Lee. Okay.
So the other issue is some of those are, you know, it's not as clean as it looks when you get down to you really enlarge it. there's ink bleeds and spots and things like that you have to decide, well, am I going to include this in it or not? And so it's a little bit tedious when these might be able to be done relatively easily if the red part of it would be completely be able to be separated.
Do you begin to scan? Do you begin to scan at like 600 DPI or higher?
I use 300, but that's what Dave and I have agreed on. But I can do 600.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, what I do is use the ones that Dave sends me, and they're 300 because I don't have them necessarily separated out as to which is fake and which is real, and so he's the one that makes that determination initially, and then he sends me those, and I send them.
I see. Okay, great. Thank you, Eric.
The other thing that can be done in Photoshop is to actually measure the overprints if you have an accurate scan. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to necessarily do that by hand.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you. Great. Good information. I need more practice in Photoshop. It's a complex program and there's a lot to learn. Okay, so getting back to the stamp side of it. So these stamps were issued, here are the ISGC numbers, and the amount that was surcharged on the 3 centavo was 50,000. On the 5 centavo on 15 from Waterloo was 245,000. The 5 on 15 from Perkins Bacon was 55,000. And the 15 centavo on 15 peso, also by Waterloo, 200,000. And the 20 on 15, also 200,000. Now, we'll talk about it later, but 2 of the values the remainders were destroyed. On the Perkins Bacon issue, 46,162 were destroyed. On the 20 centavo, 151,998 were destroyed. And they were destroyed in a very interesting way. They were destroyed by fire on purpose. And the amount that were actually sold then, as you can see in the last column, the Perkins Bacon, only about 9,000 were sold. And there's a comment that this may be kind of undervalued in the catalogs, considering how few there are available. I have a half sheet. Also, what's different about these is the Waterloo stamps, the original stamps, were issued in sheets of 100, but the Perkins Bacon were in sheets of 50. There are some really interesting varieties of these stamps. If we begin with Waterloo's 15 on 15 black, you have a variety, actually 2 varieties of shifted overprint. The overprint is shifted so far upward that 40 stamps show the word Servicio at the bottom instead of the top. And 10 of the stamps, this only happened in 1 sheet. The Servicio, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Let me restate something. These are on the Perkins Bacon, not the Waterloos. These are on the Perkins Bacon. Only 1 sheet of 50 then had 40 of the stamps shifted so that Servicio showed on the bottom. 10 were so far shifted that Servicio doesn't even appear. On the 15 on 15 black, this is from Waterloo. You have on ISGC number 360A, a double surcharge in red and green. Well, what does that come from? The best I can tell is there was an experimental printing that included both colors. So we know that there were 100 of those. 1 sheet was done. There's a double surcharge in red. And there's a double surcharge in red and yellow that's reported, but only 1 copy's been reported of that, I believe. In the 20 centavo on 15 black, again, you have 1 sheet of inverted surcharge and 1 of double surcharge. So here's the second sheet that will appear in the new handbook. And just to go over some of where it says here, the 359, that's the Perkins-Bacon, is underpriced in the catalogs. And again, these notes are on pricing are very, very old. It said they sell for about $45. The 357, which is a 3 centavo, is the most difficult to find on commercial covers. The 359, that Perkins-Bacon, is a little bit more abundant on cover because although fewer sold, most were used commercially. We talked a little bit about the varieties, and one interesting point I want to highlight here is that Robert Donald recalls that his father, who was serving in a US diplomatic post in Guatemala at the time, bought the entire sheet of 360A. And if we go back just one page, 360A, as a reminder, was that double surcharge in red and green. So there was one sheet of that, and he actually bought the sheet, and the only used copy we know of that particular stamp was from the father to the son, who was in the United States at school. And the cover, which bears that stamp, was severely damaged in a German air raid on Southampton, England. His father also bought the only known copy of the 360C. And going back as a reminder, 360C is that double surcharge in red and yellow. So that's a story with that. And the second surcharge with that chrome yellow is on one stamp and a block with 3 normal varieties. I don't know how that happens, since as far as I know, the overprint plate is inked at one time. So how a yellow got in there, I don't know. All copies of 361A, let's go back to 361 for a moment. 361A is the inverted surcharge on the 20 centavo. So all copies of the 361A have slight stains. The second variety of that 20 centavo is a double overprint. And as you'll soon see, you can barely tell it's a double overprint because the second strike is really close to the original strike. And it says it's only visible on 20 stamps in the sheet. As far as the history of the issue, in the handbook.
Michael, can I ask
yes.
something?
Sure.
You're talking about a yellow and red overprint.
Yes.
But in my Michel, it is stated green and red. And in Scott is also green and red.
Yes. Well, there are 2 double surcharges. One is green and red. We have a whole sheet of that. I actually have a copy to show you. And there was a red and yellow also, which is strange to me.
Yeah, they are not mentioned in either Scott or Michel.
Not surprising. We're the best at ISGC. So let's see. We'll talk about the acuerdo later in a little bit more detail. So the denominations, the stamps, match up pretty closely with the airmail rates listed. The reason that there are question marks there for the page numbers is because we haven't determined page numbers yet for the new book. So I've got to go through the new book and change all the question marks into actual page numbers at the end of the process. So they match pretty closely, the rates. So there's that question of why the Perkins-Bacon stamp got into the mix at all. The original printing order, which we'll be looking at in a little while, called for the surcharging of 300,000 of the black 15 peso stamps with a 5 centavo value. And it appears that the Tipografia was given supplies from both the 1924 and the 1926 stamps. And no one even noticed it for quite a long time. Not until 1933 did anyone even notice that the Perkins-Bacon stamp was overprinted as well. And it was notice was published in Revista Filatélica Centroamericana in 1934, way after the stamps had been retired from sales. So the destruction happened in 1936, and the 359, that Perkins-Bacon, is the scarcest of the early Guatemalan airmails. And later we'll talk about the destruction. I was fortunate enough to have some of these rarities in my own collection, so I thought I'd show you what they actually look like. This one is the 5 centavo de quetzal on 15 pesos. Notice the surcharge is shifted upwards. The word servicio appears at the bottom. This is 359A on the Perkins-Bacon. This one, here's that double surcharge in red and green. 100 of these were issued. This is the inverted surcharge on the Waterloo issue. Again, 100 were issued. And finally, here's that double overprint on the Waterloo. If you look at the word aereo in the near the upper right, if you look at the capital A, it's a little easier to see the double impression. It's a little bit on the subtle side. The first A also, actually, the A in postal is probably a little bit clearer in seeing the double impression. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about these acuerdo. Let me see if I can, let's see. Okay, this is covering, here we go. Make it a little bit easier to read, perhaps. How's this? Okay. All right. So here's the order on issuing the stamps. And you can see the quantities involved here. Just a note, the way that ISGC lists them is 5 in a row, and they put the two 5 centavo values as adjacent catalog numbers, both the Perkins-Bacon and Waterloo. Scott broke them out a little differently. They have C1 to 4 as Waterloo and C5 as Perkins-Bacon. So as we go further down into the literature, if you look at the Scott numbering system, just kind of keep that in mind. So this is the authorization, and a little bit about the distribution of the stamps. Sorry, just a little awkward moving things around here. Okay, here's a report or question that came up. Someone, Harry Matazar, a hardworking dealer in Latin America. Let me make this bigger. One of the disadvantages of doing this kind of presentation using a PDF files and showing them directly is that you have to do the enlarging and reducing on the fly, so to speak. Let's see, hold on a second. I see what's happening here, okay. The question came up, this guy Matazar looked at one of the stamps, the Scott C3, and thought instead of the correct year of 1933, instead of 1928, he saw 1923 on the stamp. At least he thought he did. So Roland Goodman, who was the editor of the original G1 and G2 catalogs, wrote a note in El Quetzal that first of all, it's really hard to make out the red overprint on the black background, and that he really came to the conclusion that the 3 at the end was really an 8, where the impression was a bit on the light side, and that there was no 1923 error. And he continues that discussion somewhat. That's what that document's about. Some of what I'm about to show you is a little bit on the repetitive side. It comes from different issues of El Quetzal, mostly. Here, the editor of El Quetzal decided to show in one place the printing quantities. So what we're interested in is C1 to C5. This information has really been presented already. And here's a question relating to the perforations. This comes from an El Quetzal in 1961. Oh, passed it. And he says, perforations on the airmail have been a recent interest of yours truly, the editor. Scott lists C1 to 4 and so forth with a perf 13. And the editor is basically saying no one's actually seen a perf 13. Has anyone seen it? That's what that's about. Now there's the whole story about burning those 2 values. And here's a Guatemala Act that was translated to English. The first part of the act is basically a listing of the authorizations to burn. But I think the next part is a little bit more interesting. Let's see, on April 23rd, 1936, a bunch of fellows got together. They included a representative of the Philatelic Society of Guatemala, and another William Howe, a philatelist, was present, as well as officials, the keeper of the records of the Exchequer and the auditor of accounts and so forth. They were all present. And the first thing they did, they started about 8 o'clock in the morning. They started counting the stamps they were going to destroy. And there were quite a number of them, as we'll soon see. So, so this is what happened. That day, they started 8 o'clock in the morning. Looks like they broke for lunch, and they continued till late in the afternoon. And they destroyed 1,295,185 stamps by burning them. And here's a list of the stamps they burned that day. And you can see in the listing C4, that 20 centavo and 15 peso. Waterloo was 151,998. And C5, which was the Perkins Bacon, they destroyed 46,162. And again, this is just more confirmation about the destruction of the stamps. Let's see. The rest that act was actually split between 2 issues of El Quetzal. They finished it in the bottom part of this page. Again, it's all about the number of stamps to be destroyed, but this is the actual order translated from Spanish. So again, we have more about the destruction. So let's see, the incineration took place in a special furnace, not just any furnace, of the post office department, and with the assistance of the above named persons. The work was completed at 6:30 p.m., having stopped at 12 and resumed at 2 p.m. In the presence of the witnesses, I read the proceedings as described in Articles 2 and 3 to the persons present at this meeting, who, having understood their meaning, accepted, ratified, and signed it. So that was the end of those stamps. Okay. Okay, this is the kind of first reporting of a few of the errors, the shifted error, where the overprint is shifted, They talk about that here. A little bit, I tried to see if I could find some information on the auction sales of some of these varieties. So this was November 1972. The auction was by a dealer named Bruce Ball, and he sold a C3A, that's the double surcharge, for $37.50. And let's see, Scott catalog. I'm curious to see what these actually catalog for today. So bear with me a moment while I find that for you. Here it is, C124. Okay, so these varieties today list in Scott's for $100 a piece. Now, I thought about that for a minute. $100 a piece for a stamp of which less than 100 exist. That's amazing to me. It should be a lot more, I think. Okay, here's what I did next. So I said, well, how common are these stamps on cover? What do they look like? So I went through my own collection and only copied covers that had one of these stamps on it. So I'll go through these very quickly. So here's a cover. This is a commercial registered cover. Most of the covers you're going to see are first flight covers. They're more common on first flight covers than they are on commercial covers. So here's a commercial cover, registered, and the franking is interesting. So if you count up the value of all the stamps here, it comes to 24 centavos, and the mail fee for the first 20 grams is 5 centavo. Registry fee of 10 centavo. This is from Guatemala City to Harlington, Texas, to the Brownsville, Texas airfield. And so you have 24 centavos, total 20 centavos for the postage. I'm sorry, 25 centavos for the airmail. 10 centavos registry fee, return receipt fee of 8 centavos, and a postal tax of 1 centavos. Here's another commercial cover, similar in some ways. This one went from Guatemala City to Ummerholz, Germany, via New York, and 21 centavos total franking. And I don't want to spend time right now going over the postmarks, but you can certainly spend time looking at those. The rest of the covers are either first flight covers, or in this case, this actually celebrates a railroad. This is a cover from Guatemala City to Zacapa to San Salvador. And the Ferrocarril Oriental, one of the Ambulante lines, they have a stamp, blue rubber stamp celebrating that. And this is a total of 28 centavos. And again, we see the same blue stamp for the Ferrocarril. This one is Guatemala City. Again, it's very similar. Guatemala City is Zacapa, El Salvador. This is to Cristobal in Canal Zone. Guatemala City to Panama. To El Salvador. Again to El Salvador. To San Lorenzo, Honduras. This one went somehow to the, it was addressed to Washington, D.C., but the cachet says it went to, it says Central, South America, and Antilles, but it went to Washington, D.C. Okay, now we get to an article that appeared in 2019 in El Quetzal by our good friend David Reitzma. David, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Great, great. Okay. Well, David, you wrote the article. I'm going to talk a little bit about it, but then I've got a question for you. So Dave wrote this article about the unique C4A used on cover. That's the inverted 20 centavo surcharge. It was canceled with a double ring hand stamp, July 14th, 1931. I do have a question about the franking of this one, actually. It says that the total, let me see if I get this right. The total franking is, let's see, where is the total franking? Okay, I'll have to figure it out. 20 centavos plus 3 is 23 centavos. 24 centavos is the total franking. So that's 1 cent postal tax plus 5 cent registration fee plus 15 cents exterior airmail rate. That's a total, according to the article, of 21 centavos, but we actually have 24 centavos. So I think what was left out is the actual postage fee itself, which was 3 centavos. So the 20 centavos cover the registration and the airmail fee. And of course, you have that ubiquitous 1 centavo postal tax. But Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think the article accounted for the extra 3 centavos.
I don't know. You're right, I'm sure.
Yeah, again, no big thing, but okay. So has receiving hand stamp on the back. And Dave provides a lot more information about the stamp, some of which we've gone over already. And 100 of that stamp existed according to G2. We don't know when the error sheet was discovered. It was first reported in 1952 issue of El Quetzal by Romeo Routhier, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, a very prolific writer and a major Guatemala collector. So the question arises as to whether this cover is a commercial use or philatelic. Now Dave states here, if it was philatelic, then it was likely from the sheet of 100 stamps. And if commercial, there's a possibility that more than one sheet existed. David, can you explain that? I don't understand that part.
Well, you know, obviously that's just surmising
Sure.
what might have happened there, because it seemed unlikely that whoever found that sheet would have started, you know, taking it apart and using it as postage when anyone would have known that it was worth more as a mint stamp. David Lindwall told me that it was sent by someone who worked in a hardware store, I believe, in Guatemala City, to someone who worked in one in San Salvador, but that might have given some credibility to the fact that it was a commercial usage, but I don't know, obviously.
Right. It looks like commercial usage to me. Even if you go back, even the pattern of laying out the stamps, it speaks to me of commercial usage. But again, that's just an opinion.
Right.
So this is the only reported use on cover of that stamp. There's no listing of it in Scott or G2 of a value used. So I think this probably is unique. And to end the presentation, David recently reported on the Corinfilla auction. That was your report, Dave, right? Or was it
Dave Lindwall.
Author? Oh, it was Dave Lindwall did this on Corinfilla, right? So the cover sold and maybe have reached a record for the highest price paid for a airmail cover sold at auction. It was sold for roughly $700 US plus commission. And I guess I'm happy to report that I'm the one who bought it. So thank you, David. And my last question.
Thank you, Michael.
I'm glad to give you the money. By the way, when I bought this, I had no idea it was yours. Absolutely none, and I'm pleased that it was. Can you say a few words about how you found this thing? What was the source of it?
Yeah. Well, I found it on eBay. And a lot of times when you find a deal like that, it's not accurately described. So nobody looks at it or bids on it. This one actually was correctly described as an error. It was a terrible photo, may have been the reason why people didn't bid on it. As I recall, the starting bid was it was sold by a French eBay seller, and I believe the starting bid was $49, something like that.
Right.
And it only had two bidders, and which was a very strange thing. Just there was no bidding, and sometimes those things happen.
Can you tell me what the final bid was? I won't be upset. I promise you.
Yes, you will.
No, I won't.
$55.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Fabulous, David. Fabulous.
Now you're mad, aren't you?
No. I think seriously. I think it's worth $700. I think you did great in recognizing it and bidding and winning. No hard feelings at all. That's great, and we've managed to publicize. Actually, you're writing that article about it made it worth more. It really does. So I encourage everyone who discovers something, write about it. I made, I'll end this by saying I made a discovery a few days ago. Let me see if I can find it. Let me stop sharing for a moment. Well, I'll just describe it. You'll see it in El Quetzal, the next issue. It was a fairly common Guatemala commemorative stamp. It was design error, which means it's not valuable. It's just design error. But what was interesting was the years on the stamp. It celebrated a sesquicentennial, so the years were like 1875 to 2000. So it was probably a 2000 stamp. And normally the year would be listed as 1875-200. Well, this one, the years are listed as 1,875 to 2,200. The designer didn't realize it was a date and just wrote numbers as if they were regular numbers. So that stamp may go up in value from 25 cents to 50, who knows? Okay, that completes the discussion. We're open for any Q&A or comments about what I just did. This was experimental. I didn't know how this would come off, so feel free.
Okay, I have a question.
Sure.
It's probably a stupid question, but why did they destroy those stamps?
Well, they knew they weren't going to use them anymore, and there's no reason to have these already overprinted stamps available. Although there's a history in stamp collecting, not in Guatemala, of multiple overprints where they overprint it once to change the value, then they have excess of those left over, and they overprint the overprinted stamps again to change it again. But that hasn't happened in Guatemala as far as I know.
Oh, I would just think they keep on using it, considering some of them they cut in pieces. So
keep in mind the postal rates change also, making the stamps less useful.
Okay, thank you.
There are a lot of reasons. It's not unusual to destroy remainders. Also, it's actually a favor in a way to stamp collectors, because when you have large volumes of stamps left in the archives, sometimes what will happen is a stamp is known to be rare, and all of a sudden the archives open up. That happened in the United States. Actually, in the United States, with revenue stamps held by the government. The government, these stamps, some were very, very rare, in the thousands and thousands of dollars. And the government decided to, as a fundraiser, to auction off the remainders of these stamps. You can't tell the originally issued stamps from the remainders that are sold off. So people lost a lot of money who had invested in the stamps before the archives were let loose.
Yeah, I think didn't Eric Jackson get the majority of those though?
I think Eric did, but I like Eric. I mean, I wrote a book on Latvia revenues, and Eric bought a lot of them. So I'm appreciative of Eric. Eric is also the stamp dealer representative to the APS. Good guy.
So I can share a few of the stamps you just talked about. This one was in El Quetzal a couple El Quetzals ago. This is the green. I don't know how well you can see it. The green and red double overprint.
Oh, so you and I have cornered 2 out of 100, 2% of the market knows.
That one. Here's the Perkins. You have a half sheet. I've got a part sheet. You can tell with the selvage that it was issued in sheets of 50.
Yeah, but that's Perfin is the official Perfin. Is that what that is?
That's the Perkins.
With the name official.
With official?
What is the Perfin? What does it say?
Oh, it says Perkins on top. Not Perfin.
Perkins.
This is the Perkins.
Oh, I thought you said
Perf.
Perf. I'm sorry. I thought you said Perfins.
Oh,
F.
it's
I want
similar.
to know about that.
But if who may or may not have seen it. And then I have a full sheet of the 3 centavo in a sheet of 100. It's folded.
Right. If anyone's interested on Del Camp, there is a set of the 4 Waterloo sheets in 100 on sale now.
Cool. The last one I have here, you might find interesting, Michael. The bottom, there's a plate block, a bottom right hand stamp. This is the shifted. The bottom right stamp is shifted and kissed the top of the overprint. Is
Oh, I see.
kissing
Yeah.
the top of the purse. If you
Yeah.
separated
Yeah.
this block, you'd have basically an omitted part of the overprint.
Oh, that's nice. Very interesting.
Michael, if you stop sharing your screen, we can see those.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Yeah. Hang on a
I'm
second.
looking at those little teeny squares.
Oh,
trying
thank
to
you.
see what he's
Thank you.
talking
Yeah.
about.
Let me stop sharing.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And
Sure,
now,
let's see if I can get that up there. I don't know
yeah,
how well
Glenn,
it's gonna
Glenn,
show.
hang on a second. Let me let you share your screen. Hold on.
Oh, okay.
Co-host. Okay, now you have the ability to share your screen.
Let's see, where do I go down here?
On the very bottom is a green icon.
I got that.
Click that and then,
I have screen, movies, TV, camera.
oh wait, that's not gonna help.
Does that work?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
worked.
Oh, there,
Okay.
okay, great. There
There
it
you
goes.
are.
I push buttons, but it's not coming up.
Well,
Can you see
except
full
you're
screen there?
frozen. You're frozen.
Yeah. I don't know if that's gonna work.
No, I think I know something I can do here. Hold on. Stop sharing.
Okay, let's see. And you trying to get out of here. Well, that's not working. I lost my little icons.
Well,
down
I've
below.
got you highlighted anyway, so it'll be easier for people to see your screen, I think.
There you go. Stop sharing.
Okay.
There.
So now if you hold something up, it'll be much bigger to everyone.
Well, let me know.
Yes,
Okay,
Oh,
that's
I see.
perfect.
Yeah, the focus is a little off. Doesn't want to focus that close, it looks like.
But you can see where the red
Yeah.
overprint is.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's a
Yeah.
big shift.
Yep.
And it's
Great.
the plate block, so that's kind of cool.
Very nice. I like the way you mount your collection as well.
Well, most of my collection's a pretty mess. to be worked out later.
Right.
Were all of the overprints done with a printing press and say a offset lithography sheet or something like that, or did they ever use rubber stamps?
Good question.
Well, they used rubber stamps on some of the official overprints for
Oh,
sure,
yeah, yeah.
but I don't think they did on the airmails.
Now, this is just straight typography. So this is straight typography. There shouldn't be any offset.
Well, to have that much of a mistake in the lining up the print is kind of interesting registration wise.
Well, but even in lithography, you can not have the sheet aligned.
Right.
That
but
happened a lot with Guatemala printings.
Right.
Yeah.
But usually with the registration process, you can do it because that's how they get the different colors.
Okay, Glenn, I've removed your spotlight. Sorry. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, James.
Oh, super. When I'm looking at my examples on cover, I've noticed the overprint is pretty consistent where it ends up on the stamp. It's a left and right issue for me, not an up and down issue. Some of my stamps, the overprints are far to the left or far to the right. That seems to be the variation I'm seeing on here.
Yeah,
on my
just poor quality control and alignment.
It's not extravagant, but you can tell it's off the margin almost. So
Right.
probably there's more. There's probably some out there that show even more variation than the ones I have.
Right.
I probably missed it, but do you know how many sheets were actually printed at one time with the overprints? In other words, 100 or 1,000 or something like that?
I thought they did it all at once is what I'm gathering. So if you had, let's say, 200,000 sheets, 200,000 stamps rather, so they overprinted 2,000 sheets. I'm assuming they did it at once.
Yeah, this
James, the way they did that, it was pretty hard for the overprints to be on a double overprint sheet, for one overprint to be horizontally, vertically offset. And Kerry Kurtenge talked about that in some of his articles on the Waterloo surcharges, saying that in the case of a vertical overprint that's separated from the second one, it was likely not genuine, whereas a double overprint where the two overprints were on the same horizontal plane, same horizontal line, if you will, was more likely to be genuine. So Michael's red and green double overprint, it probably was done at two different times. It would seem likely, given the question as to why that even exists, would support that as well.
Also, that the double overprint that I showed you, where I pointed out the letter A, that's clearly horizontal double kiss kind of. It's not a vertical displacement.
Well, I noticed the letters on that were much thicker too, so that sort of as a clue that it was double overprinted.
Right. It's nicer though if you can actually see the separation instead of just as a thickening. If you can see the doubling. Any other questions or comments?
I thought this was a good presentation. I like the format of, tying in the history of a definite set of stamps, and then tying in the EQ articles and so forth. That was well done.
Would you have preferred more detail on the colors? I really felt in planning this that it would become boring if I did any more on them.
No, I thought what you did was just about right for me anyway, but.
Okay. And Bob is shaking his head yes too.
Michael, one thing I would add, because I kind of enjoyed sharing my stuff, if we kind of pre-plan of what issues we're going to talk about, maybe we can have our stuff ready to share.
Yeah. Well, that's actually my fault. I put off doing this for quite a while. I've been busy with a million things.
Yeah, no fault there. It's just a
no, but you're right. Actually, what I was considering doing, I didn't do it. because I just didn't do it in the right order. I have, this stack of papers which represents all the sheets in the presentation. I was actually going to make it into a PDF to distribute to everyone. Well, let me ask that as a question. Would you prefer to have had this material in advance to study, or does it feel too much like homework?
No, I would love to have a copy of it.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea.
More is better sometimes.
Okay.
As
Like I
long as
said,
you don't
I'm
give us
just
an
trying. I'm just
examination.
trying to figure out how to structure it. I think it's interesting to pick some stamps that aren't at anyone's forefront as being of special interest, and just doing a deep dive, seeing what information is there about this thing. I also took a look. There's a section of our online library which just lists non-EQ articles alphabetically. I couldn't find anything there at all. I had difficulty with finding material in EQ because of the indexing. I used the CD-ROM basically, and used the indexing program. There was an error. The file extension on the index file was wrong. It was supposed to be a .pdx and it was .idx, so it didn't work until I changed the extension. Then it worked. But what I've discovered is that, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, there's some assumptions I'm about to make. I assume that the articles were scanned in using Adobe Acrobat Pro or something like that to produce searchable files.
Yes.
Okay, so that's correct. In the process of doing that, Adobe uses some kind of OCR, optical character recognition, in order to make them readable. So the indexing doesn't work all that well in some cases because the OCR isn't perfect. It never is.
Correct.
And I noticed when I'm creating this book using a lot of OCR and a lot of editing. So when you search, sometimes it can't find things because there was an error in converting the visual text to synthesized text.
Correct.
And I don't know any way out of that.
And I did not go back and edit that.
No, that would be a gargantuan test. No, I can see why you wouldn't. I'm just complaining kind of that it makes it harder. And also the index search program isn't a very sophisticated one. It doesn't allow you to really narrow the search very well and limit it as a powerful search engine would handle it.
There are some, if you know how to manipulate that a little bit, you can kind of get search for words that are close together, but it's cumbersome.
I don't know if there's another public kind of search engine that can work on that index. Matt?
I wanted to ask a question when you're done. So.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That's all I have to say about it. I'm just trying to get into the process of how to do these and why it becomes a little difficult. Okay, Matt.
Well, I'm trying to visualize how you can have a double print. And does anybody know what the presses look like that they printed these on? Were they flat bed plates or were they rounded? I'm assuming that they're just doing 100 sheet pages instead of very wide places. But it would seem to me that if you would only have one, it would be that it stuck to the plate or something like that. So I think it's anyway, if I knew what the printing presses look like, it would help. I've had some experience printing.
Does anyone know what the configuration of the printing press was? I thought, I could be wrong, I thought the lithography process was always kind of a flat plate process with a lithographic stone.
Well, yeah, I've done that. And to make a double print on that would be pretty difficult to do. You'd have to leave the paper down. I mean, it's usually the paper's taken off and moved and so on. So I'm wondering how you could have double prints. That's what I'm getting at.
Well, could you, Matt, since you're more familiar with presses than I am, could you have a double strike of the press?
The only thing I could figure would be that if it slipped and then it was run through twice a second time, that I don't really think you can. That's what I'm trying to figure out. And there would be no reason to pick it up and reprint it again, because you'd have to, if it's on a stone, you really have problems lining the stone up with the thing. So that's I think it'd be interesting.
It's a good question. I don't know
how that happens. Yeah.
That's a great research project for somebody.
It's a general philatelic question too. So there are people who know the answer. Someone like John Hotchner probably knows, you know. Any other questions or comments?
While we were doing this, I quickly scanned my copies of that and tried to separate that out. Everywhere the red is over the black in the background, it doesn't separate very well. The program sees that as black and not red, even though there's some red over it, and it doesn't separate that. So it's pretty. It would have to be done by hand, kind of a tracing type of thing. Tedious.
Yeah, well, I've done that. Basically, you just you blow up the image tremendously, and you can even use something like Paint, Microsoft Paint, where you can delete pixel by pixel. And assuming that the resolution was high enough when it was scanned, it does leave a little bit of a jagged line that you don't see at normal magnifications.
And you sometimes have to make decisions, you know, do I include this or do I not include that pixel because it's a blurry print, or there was a ink skip, or there was some spread of the ink, or there's it splashed a little bit maybe.
I've done it. It's hard. It's hard.
I was just going to make a comment about what Glenn mentioned. I thought that was really enjoyable, having him add what he's got. So the idea of being able to share, and it was really nice.
That's really true. You know, I'd like to emphasize that point. I think it's a really good idea. If people can bring their own stuff and maybe just scan them into their own computers, and then rather than hold up the examples like Glenn did, just give them the screen and let them show whatever they want to show.
A team project. I like it.
I think you could possibly have a pick an issue session.
Yeah.
Where you pick a particular issue, and then it's open to all, and anyone that's got anything of interest from that particular issue shows it, and you could just, you know, go through everybody one by one, whoever's got something to show. No compulsion, but if there's something of interest, that might be a way of spreading knowledge.
Right, and maybe it would be a way of getting additional speakers. You're probably tired of hearing me.
I'm not tired of hearing you, Michael. I do have one desired issue and challenge you, Michael, because you mentioned on the large Quetzal, the 1 centavo, you know what I'm talking about, the engraved versus the, what is it, typograph?
Oh yeah, I know the stamp you mean. You've raised that before.
I have. I checked the train that you talked about, and you know, with the different amount of color put to any particular stamp and so many color varieties, I'm not seeing what you haven't detailed for me yet. But that would be an interesting one to me. Maybe just do the entire issue, but concentrate on that one center.
Well, maybe. I'm a little afraid that I won't find the differences either.
Are there any stamps that were done both ways?
Yes. When we say both ways, what do you mean?
I mean both engraved and lithographed?
Yes, that's what we're talking about.
Okay, that's what I thought.
The large Quetzals started off as lithographed, and then they did engraved versions. The 1 centavos is so difficult for most people to differentiate. In some cases, it's easy because, let's say, one value is only issued lithographed in pink, and no other stamps were.
I wonder why.
Okay.
Being a friend. Heard what he said to me.
I don't know who that is.
Now, I appreciate this, Michael. It gave me some context to some stamps I haven't paid a whole lot of attention to that are always around, and I now know more about these stamps.
Thank you. We'll do this. We'll do this again. I don't remember the exact schedule for the rest of the year. We have a schedule. It covers every month. Next month is going to be a really interesting one. It's going to be a non-philatelic talk by a fellow diplomat of Dave Lindvall's. That's going to be interesting. We're going to learn about a coup d'etat in Guatemala.
Sure.
Okay, any more questions before we cose the meeting?
So you're asking these to go?
Okay, thank you everyone for attending. And
Thank you for such a nice presentation.
Well, thanks, Alfredo. By the way, I would like to welcome everyone to attend a board meeting of the ISGC. Although we have a board that includes officers and board members, our meetings are open to any ISGC member who just wants to hear the process and maybe take part in the process. You know, we could use some new ideas, some new blood, some new hands-on. So if you're interested, please drop me an email and I'll put you on the invite list to attend the next board meeting. They happen once a month. It's on a Monday and it's at noon Pacific, which is 3 Eastern time, East Coast time. It'd be a good chance for you to see what's going on and what the future planning is and to become an integral part.
You might mention Westpac's coming up.
Thank you. Westpac's is coming up, and Westpac's, do you have the exact dates, anyone? April
21st?
Yeah, I think that's April 1st, that weekend. It's the biggest show on the West Coast of the United States. ISGC will be meeting there, not officially convening, that has different meaning, but we'll be there. I'm going to be giving a series of live talks at PIPEX, Westpac's, and the Great America Stamp Show on bringing philatelic handbooks back from the dead. It's going to detail the process that we're going through to recreate our own handbooks, and I think it'll be of interest to many specialist societies who are facing this problem by avoiding it.
Westpac's is 22nd, 23rd.
April 22nd to the 24th.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's a great show. Tremendous amount of material. There'll be an APS town hall meeting. And of course, the Great America Stamp Show is coming up in August. So you save your shekels and centavos and pesos for it. Let's see, at PIPEX, I will be showing a 10-frame exhibit on the essays and proofs of Guatemala, and at the Great America Stamp Show, but not at Westpac's. Any other suggestions, questions? And if you come to Westpac's, our past president, Jaime